I've been wanting to do a reading of Bhagavad Gita, and I've actually made a couple attempts, but things weren't lining up at home. This is something that I've desired to do. Deep down, I've committed to doing it, and if I was not going to do it, I would feel like I betrayed myself. So here we go. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to jump into it. Chapter 2. Now, to recap Chapter 1, the image is we have a great warrior. His name is Arjuna, uh, who's about to go into battle. Before he goes into battle, he's a general, he's a leader of a fight. Before he goes into battle, he wants to examine both sides. So he asks his charioteer to drive him between two armies. And as they're driving between two armies, he recognizes that the people that he's going to go fight against are his friends, his family, kinsmen, his teachers, instructors. And he's heartbroken. He doesn't see a point in fighting and killing these beautiful souls that he respects, these noble warriors and soldiers. He makes a point that he would much rather die than win and live in a kingdom without these loved ones, without the people that he admires. So in chapter two, Krishna actually gets a chance to reply, and he appeals to the philosophical side of things, and then he goes into spiritual later down the road. This is a long chapter, the longest chapter in the book, so I'm going to try to tackle it head on all the way through. Chapter 2, Self-Realization, the Bhagavad Gita. Sanjaya. Sanjaya is the seer, he's the narrator, he's the one that was able to make this come about. These are the words that Sri Krishna spoke to the despairing Arjuna, whose eyes were burning with tears of pity and confusion. Krishna. This despair and weakness in a time of crisis are mean and unworthy of you, Arjuna. How have you fallen into a state so far from the path of liberation? It does not become you to yield into this weakness. Arise with a brave heart and destroy the enemy. Arjuna. How can I ever bring myself to fight against Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of reverence? How can I, Krishna? Surely it would be better to spend my life begging than to kill these great and worthy souls. If I killed them, every pleasure I found would be tainted. I don't know which would be better, for us to conquer them or for them to conquer us. The sons of Dhritarashtra has confronted us, but why would we care to live if we killed them? My will is paralyzed and I am utterly confused. Tell me, which is the better path for me? Let me be your disciple. I have fallen at your feet. Give me instruction. What can overcome a sorrow that saps all my vitality? Even power over men and gods, or the wealth of an empire, seem empty. Sanjaya. This is how Arjuna, the great warrior, spoke to Sri Krishna with the words, O Krishna, I will not fight. He felt silent as they stood between the two armies. Sri Krishna smiled and replied to Arjuna, who had sunk into despair. And this is what Krishna has to say. He jumps into this monologue, which so far is going to be my favorite lines of Bhagavad Gita. You speak sincerely, but your sorrow has no cause. The wise grieve neither for the living or the dead. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. There has never been a time when you and I and the great kings gathered here have not existed, nor will there ever be a time when we will cease to exist. There has never been a time when you and I and the great kings gathered here have not existed, nor will there ever be a time when we will cease to exist. As the same person inhabits the body through childhood, youth, and old age, so too, at the time of death, he attains another body. The wise are not deluded by these changes. When the sense objects contact, when the senses, the five senses, contact sense objects, anything out there that you can perceive, a person experiences hot or cold, pleasure or pain. These experiences are fleeting. They come and go. Bear them patiently, Arjuna. Those who are unaffected by these changes, who are the same in pleasure and pain, are truly wise and fit for immortality. The people that enter into eternal life, the candidates that are worthy of eternal life, remain the same in pleasure, pain, hot or cold, in wet, dry, and he says, in praise and dishonor, in failure and success. If you can remain the same without change, in success and failure, and not be bummed out by trading 50K and losing it, or trading 20K and turning it into 250,000. If you can remain the same and it does not change you, you're fit for eternal life. Assert your strength and realize this. The impermanent has no reality. The world of change is not real. Reality lies in the eternal. Those who have seen the boundary between these two have attained the end of all knowledge. Realize that which pervades the universe. Realize that which comes before the universe, the source, and is indestructible. No power can affect this unchanging, imperishable reality. The body is mortal, but that which dwells in the body is immortal and immeasurable. Therefore, Arjuna, fight in this battle. One believes he is the slayer. Another believes he is the slain. Both are ignorant. There is neither slayer nor slain. You were never born. You will never die. You have never changed. You can never change. Unborn, eternal, immutable, immemorial. You do not die when your body dies. So, right now he's talking to a different kind of you. Because obviously the Tim that I identify myself with is born, is not eternal, mutable. He dies. So, who is it that Krishna is referring to when he's talking to you? You were never born. You will never die. You have never changed. Which you? If these words are true, then he is definitely talking to a different kind of you than what we've gotten used to identify ourselves with. Realizing that which is indestructible. So realizing, identifying yourself with, or uniting with that which is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and unchanging. How can you slay or cause another to slay? As one abandons worn out clothes and acquires new ones, so when the body is worn out, a new one is acquired by the self, the capital self. who lives within. So the one that he's talking about that is never born, never changes, never dies, the eternal, is the self, the capital self, that lives within. There's something within every single one of us that we don't really recognize, that is dormant. Like uh, the Outwitting the Devil talks about the other self, the capital self, uh, and sometimes he uses this beautiful phrase, this allowing the seed to germinate. It's like there is that beautiful eternal seed within every one of us that experiences all this but remains dormant, and only under great stress and suffering that other self, the seed of the other self, germinates and comes to life and makes itself known. This is what the Gita is about. The whole book is about just that. The self, the real self, the other self, the divine within us, cannot be pierced by weapons or burned by fire. Water cannot wet it, nor the wind dry it. The self cannot be pierced or burned, made wet or dry. It is everlasting and infinite, standing on the motionless foundation of eternity. The self is unmanifested, beyond all thought. The self, the other self, is unmanifested. It has very little to nothing to do with the material realm. It's beyond all thought, beyond all change. Knowing this, you should not grieve. O mighty Arjuna, even if you believe the self to be subject to birth and death, even if you think that you, yourself, the one that you identify with, is subject to birth and death, you should not grieve. And now he gets into this rational philosophical side. Death is inevitable for the living. Birth is inevitable for the dead. Since these are unavoidable, you should not sorrow. Every creature is unmanifested at first and then attains manifestation. When its end has come, it once again becomes unmanifested. What is there to lament in this? The glory of the self is beheld by a few, and a few describe it, a few listen, but many without understanding. The self of all beings living within the body is eternal and cannot be harmed. Therefore, do not grieve. Considering your Dharma, in this sense, Dharma is the cosmic law, the grand path by which things follow. It's the the rules by which things go. But here, the Dharma is more of it's like a trajectory, the path that that we all follow. Considering your Dharma, you should not vacillate. And for a warrior, nothing is higher than a war against evil. The warrior confronted with such a war should be pleased, Arjuna, for it comes as an open gate to heaven. But if you do not participate in this battle against evil, you will incur a sin, violating your Dharma and your honor. The story of your dishonor will be repeated endlessly, and for a man of honor, dishonor is worse than death. These brave warriors will think you have withdrawn from battle out of fear, and those who formerly esteemed you will treat you with disrespect. Your enemies will ridicule your strength and say things that should not be said. What could be more painful than this? So, he's almost appealing to his ego there, but just being philosophical and rational for those who don't believe in the higher self. Death means the attainment of heaven. Victory means the enjoyment of earth. Therefore, rise up, Arjuna, resolved to fight. Having made yourself alike in pain and pleasure, profit and loss, victory and defeat, engage in this battle, and you will be freed from sin. You have heard the intellectual explanation of Sankhya, Arjuna. Now listen to the principles of yoga. By practicing these, you can break through the bonds of karma, or the law of cause and effect. And on this path, effort never goes to waste, and there is no failure. Even a little effort towards spiritual awareness will protect you from the greatest fear. I'm going to stop right here with chapter 2. This is part 1, and jump into part 2 to keep the video simple.